Fevered Spring, a Wanda Winnett Tick Tale. Chapter 10.
Haze and Hone.
We didn't all gather at once. We didn't wake up one morning unified. At first, we talked in kitchens. We talked over coffee that went cold while we compared perspectives. We talked in barber shops and on porches and in the backs of pickup trucks parked at the edges of fields.
Do you see it?
Yes.
I see it too.
It started that way, not with fury, with agreement. The image passed from hand to hand, printed on cheap paper, folded in coat pockets, tucked between pages of hymnals. Some tried to tell us the blanket was white. We held the page closer to the window. We tilted it toward sunlight. We saw what we saw. The debate was never complicated for us. It was simple. Either we trusted our own eyes, or we didn't. We chose, collectively, not to disbelieve our own senses, not to ignore our own common senses of higher discernment as a result of all we had managed to overcome together. We chose, instead, to remember our common humanity. The lantern meeting started without any formal coordination. A few neighbors lit candles outside the courthouse one evening. The next night there was more. We started calling them wisp fests. No one shouted instructions. No one demanded allegiance. Names were read aloud. Jenny Rude's among them. Silence followed each name, not the theatrical kind, but of solemn acknowledgement. The Noble Truths Network started sharing recordings of those gatherings. The audio was grainy and the signals were imperfect, but they were clear enough. "If you write it down, they may not erase it," was repeated often, especially during the earlier meetings. We, then, all of us, started writing. Ledgers were filled resolutely, dates were fastidiously noted, statements were copied with the utmost care. Not because we expected immediate justice, because we expected memory to matter. We started calling our coordinated civic efforts Whisperer Waves. That name drew a lot of attention. It inspired tons of excitement and increased our participation numbers exponentially. The Wanda Winnett Tick Tales were circulated widely. At first they were told to children sitting cross-legged near the front of lantern-lit assemblies. Soon they lined the shelves of Wanda's Wee Wonders preschool and many other places of learning. The first tale, Evander of the Meadow, became a beloved favorite for all audiences. Adults leaned closer than they meant to. The stories were not speeches, they were reminders. That birds return, that ground thaws slowly, that trees hold through rough winds. The more the tales were told, the steadier the gatherings became. Anger softened into resolve. Resolve is harder to disperse. We rediscovered that while hope may be weakened, it does not die easily. Our sense of hope burned in us like a blue-hot flame, a flame we all recognized. It provided much-needed solace as the difficult weeks under the Lemon regime dragged on. When word spread of caravans forming in the western hills, many Havenians hesitated. 13 days is a long commitment. Work waits for no one. Livestock must be fed. Children must be tended. Travel can drain already limited resources. But the phrase passed from person to person. 13 days to be good neighbors. It was not shouted, it was quietly decided by many individual people. We started walking and we loaded up our wagons, some horse-drawn, others roaring with combustion. We affectionately referred to this part of the movement as our Opus March. Some people joined for a day, then returned home. Others continued on. At each town, trustworthy information was offered and constituent signatures were collected, not hurriedly and not coerced, steadily. We read the 13 sections of the Havenlight Covenant aloud as we moved. No office above the law. Limits on executive power. Protection of public care. The words were not dramatic. They were reasonable. That was their strength. President Lemon's voice still reached us. Sharp, insistent, sometimes directed toward lands beyond our borders, and sometimes right at us. But the more his volume rose, the less it carried into our kitchens. We were no longer arguing about the shade of a blanket. We were discussing structure. How do we prevent this again? What do we change? What do we protect? The More Lemon class tried to push new controversies on us, new fears, new distractions. We found that distraction lost its force when clarity had already taken root. On the 13th day of the Opus March, the Capitol grounds filled beyond expectation. We did not arrive as a mob. We arrived as good neighbors. Farmers in worn boots, teachers with ink-stained hands, parents holding children who had learned the story of the Meadow Boy by heart. The covenant was read in full, many times. We signed, one by one, not hurried, not theatrical, deliberate. The signatures stretched longer than anyone had predicted. When the final page was complete, there would be no roar, only an exhale that would move through the crowd like wind through wheat. The equinox approached. We did not force balance, we prepared for it. And when the day and night held equal length, the covenant would be ratified, not because we shouted, because we remained. Looking back, it is tempting to say the turning was inevitable. It was not. It required kitchens, porches, lanterns, ledgers, stories. It required that enough of us say, quietly and without apology, I see what I see, and once enough of us said it together, the fever could not sustain itself. It thinned, just like the winter always does.